Hey, what's going on? This is Marcos. Today I want to talk about 10 questions you should be asking the editor. I myself get hired just to DP nowadays. I don't handle most of the pre-production or the post-production. And the clients I'm working with sometimes have very little experience in making videos. Sometimes they're very experienced and they're working with top-of-the-line editors who work on Hollywood projects. But I'm also dealt with the other side where the client doesn't have experience and they're hiring an editor who might not have that much experience. So I'm always trying to gauge where we're at, and I go through this list of questions just to see, just to make sure that I cover myself, and that, you know, then after we shoot, they're not wondering, hey, how come you did this when the editor, you know, so you want to avoid problems. So these are some of those questions that will help you if you yourself are just DPing the work. If you're handling all the post-production, then you might not need to ask many of these questions because you know what you can handle. All right. So first on the list is, what resolution and frame rate do you need? This is very important because, you know, I've dealt with European countries who want to shoot at 25, so or maybe they just are looking for 1080p footage because they have a quick turnaround, or wherever the reason is, or maybe we're just shooting a bunch of footage and they want a specific resolution, or maybe, you know, for whatever reason, you just want to make sure that your camera can handle whatever they're asking for. I've been asked for 4K 60 frames per second footage and 4K 120. Luckily, I had a camera that could do that. But if your camera can handle those high frame rates, then you might need to rent out a camera. So you want to suss out those requirements ahead of time. Number two is, what editing program are you using? I typically ask this just to see if whatever codec I'm using, their editing program can handle it. Primarily for Final Cut Pro 10, because I shoot with Blackmagic cameras. It shoots B-RAW, but natively, Final Cut can't handle that codec unless you transcode the footage first. I've done a video on how to do that. But if they're using DaVinci Premiere, they can handle that footage with, I think Premiere just requires a plugin if you're using Blackmagic. Anyways, you just want to make sure that whatever codec you're using, that their editing program can handle it. And sometimes if they're using a particular NLE like DaVinci and I have Blackmagic Raw, I found that it's easier to color grade that footage within DaVinci. So I just want to get a sense of where their editor, or what program they're using, and how hard it's going to be for them to handle the footage I'm giving them. Number three, what is the turnaround time? If the client has a fast turnaround, sometimes they need to turn over the footage or edit the final video within 3, 2, or 4 days, then you might give them a lower resolution. That's happened with me. The client just, we were dealing with like a 72-hour turnaround time, so they asked for 1080p footage and a higher compression just so they can get it to the editor fast and they can edit through it. And so it wouldn't be such a bottleneck working with bigger files. So yeah, definitely want to talk about those things with your client before you just assume they want 4K, which is not often the case. Number four, how will the footage get to the editor? A lot of times I only have direct contact with the client, and sometimes they're not even going to be on set. They're not going to be there physically. So it's all up to me to get the footage to the editor or to them. And for that is, am I going to be handling the backups, or if you're going to be there, do I just give you the footage then? Or do you want me to upload? How is the footage going to get to the editor? If they're expecting all the footage to be uploaded, then I have to explain to them, hey, my bandwidth at home it might take a couple days to upload all this footage. So again, back to the file size, maybe we shoot at a lower resolution if you're expecting me to upload. And so that's another question that can affect how you shoot, what resolution, what codec, and all this stuff, the compression rate. Number five, do you have a big enough external drive? And this is when they are going to be on set and they want me to give them the footage the day of. I've made the mistake of assuming they will have a big enough hard drive or SSD, and it turns out it's 500. They brought out a 500 gig SSD, and it wasn't enough. You know, we shot so much footage and it didn't fit, so then they had to run to the store or other times it just didn't, they had a hard drive, but it was going to take hours to transfer because it's just a lot of footage, it's huge file sizes. So they had to take my card reader and my cards with them, and then they had to ship it back to me. And that way we weren't waiting around after we wrapped up the shoot, you know. So those are the things you want to look out for. Do they have SSDs? The SSDs that are much faster to transfer footage at the end of the day. If they have hard drives, it takes hours sometimes if it's huge files. So always try to get my clients to buy SSDs. 1 terabyte usually does the trick, but again, it depends on how many cameras you're running, the resolution, the codecs, and all this stuff. But yeah, usually try to get them to use SSDs. That way you're not waiting hours after you wrap up the shoot. Number 6, can the editor's computer handle the huge file sizes? This becomes more of a problem when you're dealing with 6K footage. You know, with the Recomoto, if you're, I've had clients want to shoot with the Red and they want the 6K ultimate footage, but then the editor has problems editing because their computer is not powerful enough to handle that footage. So you want to make sure you are not given the ultimate quality when ultimately it's going to create a bottleneck for the editor. So this is where it makes sense to maybe talk to the editor because you want to get some of those specs, and hopefully they have experience with 6K footage or even 4K footage. You know, and 4K footage comes in all kinds of flavors. Some are easy to work with, some are harder. So definitely a conversation that might get very technical with the editor. Number 7, can you color grade flat picture profiles? I've been surprised the amount of times I turn over the footage and I assume the editor knows how to color grade S-Log2, S-Log3, or B-RAW footage. And then I look at the final video down the line a couple months later and just the color grade is so bad because the editor wasn't experienced with flat picture profiles. And now I'm calling the client saying, hey, I just let you know the footage, the color grade is not supposed to look like that. It's supposed to look like this. And then I send them a screenshot of me color grading that footage because otherwise their editor might think that what I shot was overexposed or it just looks bad, and I'm just trying to save that relationship because usually clients will not tell you what they think you did wrong, so you kind of have to scope it out. Anyways, it becomes a whole thing if the final grade is not treated properly. So I always try to make sure that they know how to color grade, and if they don't, do you want me to bake in the color? Again, I guess it also becomes back to the question of what is your turnaround time. Sometimes if it's a fast turnaround, they don't want flat picture profiles. They want the color baked in. Or do you want me to provide a LUT that color grades the footage for you? You know, that's another service I could provide for the client. So yeah, definitely look out for that one. Number 8, do you need audio baked into the camera? Sometimes, again, back to the question of turnaround time or just the experience level of the editor, they think they're gonna get the audio in camera, but once you're dealing with more professional editors, they know how to sync audio and they actually expect the audio to be recorded externally. Then again, there are some editors who don't wanna go through that. They want the audio baked in. So yeah, I've had that happen a couple times. Number 9, do you need timecode? This is surprisingly something that not all editors have worked with, but some projects just calls for the timecode, especially when you're running multiple cameras, maybe you're doing documentary work, recording audio externally. Then it makes sense to suggest getting timecode as a service because it's going to save the editor so much time. But again, does the editor know how to read timecode or process it in their editing program? So that's another question. So again, if the project is complex or documentary, then you might want to have that conversation. Number 10, do you plan to edit with different aspect ratios? Sometimes companies repurpose the footage we shot to, let's say, Instagram or social media with different aspect ratios. And what we shoot can't often be conformed to like a vertical or square. But if they're planning to do that, then maybe we can shoot it in a certain way that it allows for the footage to be cut in different aspect ratios. So Something that needs to be discussed, especially nowadays when footage is being repurposed for all kinds of platforms. Yeah, so there you have it. Those are the 10 most common questions I ask to clients. It helps me see where they're at, especially when, like I mentioned, we're dealing with editors who have all kinds of different experience. Also, the clients themselves often don't know the answer to these questions, but if they're working with an editor, we can figure these things out. If this was helpful to you, please let me know down in the comment section. Also, if you want to add anything to this list, I know there's plenty more things that I didn't think about, but I want to hear from you. So please share your comments down below. As always, I appreciate you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.